How did Ibrahim Traoré turn forests into gold? The shocking truth revealed. In the heart of West Africa lies a nation blessed with vast stretches of untouched wilderness, towering trees, hidden rivers, and an abundance of natural life. But for decades, these forests were viewed by outsiders as nothing more than raw land waiting to be exploited. Timber companies came and went, foreign corporations dug deep for minerals, and much of the wealth that could have changed the fate of the people simply vanished overseas. When Ibrahim Traoré rose to prominence, many expected him to follow the same well-worn path of leaders before him, shake hands with foreign investors, sign away rights to resources, and leave his people with empty promises. But what happened next shocked not only his nation, but the entire world. Traoré looked at his forests and saw not just wood, not just land, but an untapped reservoir of value that could be transformed without destroying the environment. His approach became known as turning forests into gold. The phrase was never meant literally. He wasn't melting leaves into bullion or digging for hidden treasure. Instead, it was a revolutionary policy that took the forest's potential and converted it into lasting prosperity for his people. The secret was understanding that the real wealth of the forest lay not in cutting it down, but in making it work for generations to come. The first step Traoré took was halting all uncontrolled logging. Overnight, this move sent shockwaves through the timber industry. Many critics claimed it would collapse the economy, that shutting out foreign contracts would cut off vital income. But Traoré saw things differently. The forests were a bank account his country had been spending recklessly for years. It was time to stop the withdrawals and start earning interest. Next came the most ambitious remapping of the nation's natural reserves in history. Traoré's administration deployed surveyors, ecologists, and local villagers to document every resource in the forests, from medicinal plants that could be developed into pharmaceuticals to rare fruits and nuts that could fetch high prices in global markets. The goal was simple: identify sustainable products that could be harvested without destroying the ecosystem. One of the most brilliant aspects of his plan was involving the very communities that lived in and around these forests. For too long, locals have been excluded from the profits of their own land, reduced to laborers for outside corporations. Under Traoré's system, villages were given co-ownership of certain zones. They became partners, not just workers. This meant that for every export, whether it was an herbal tea, an essential oil, or a carefully harvested hardwood, profits were shared directly with the people. To turn these raw products into something globally competitive, Traoré invested heavily in local processing facilities. Instead of shipping raw logs or unprocessed nuts abroad for pennies, factories inside the country now produced finished goods, high-quality wooden furniture, packaged organic foods, luxury oils, and herbal cosmetics. These products bore a label proudly declaring their origin, and buyers across Europe and Asia began to associate them with ethical sourcing and exceptional quality. Within 3 years, exports had risen dramatically, not in quantity of raw resources taken, but in the value of finished goods produced. The forests themselves showed signs of revival. Wildlife returned to areas once stripped bare, water sources cleared, and communities found a new balance between use and preservation. But the true genius of Traoré's forests into gold vision lay in its long-term structure. He created a sovereign eco-wealth fund, where a percentage of all profits from forest-based industries was deposited. This fund was untouchable for daily expenses. It was designed to grow and be invested in schools, hospitals, and renewable energy for future generations. Essentially, the forest was not just providing income today, it was quietly building a safety net for tomorrow. International observers initially dismissed the plan as overly idealistic. Yet, as the years passed, they could not ignore the numbers. Poverty rates in rural areas began to drop. Literacy rates climbed as new schools opened. Healthcare access improved, funded by the profits of the land itself. Other African nations sent delegations to learn how the model worked, hoping to replicate it. Asterisk, of course, there were obstacles. Illegal loggers, backed by shadowy networks, tried to sabotage the initiative. Smugglers attempted to bypass the new system, bribing local officials. But Traoré's administration responded with a mix of strict enforcement and smart incentives, paying forest rangers better wages, using drones to monitor illegal activity, and offering amnesty programs for those willing to join the legal profit-sharing economy. Asterisk, by the time the plan was in full swing, the global media had taken notice. Headlines praising Africa's green gold rush appeared in major newspapers. Environmental organizations hailed Traoré as a leader who had managed to combine economic growth with genuine conservation, a rare achievement in any part of the world. Asterisk still. Perhaps the most remarkable change was in the mindset of the people themselves. Where once a tree was seen as worth more chopped down than standing, now it was understood that its true value could grow year after year if managed wisely. Where once youth left rural villages for the city in search of work, now many returned to join the thriving eco-industries in their home regions. Asterisk, in a world facing climate crises, resource depletion, and economic instability, Ibrahim Traoré's vision proved that wealth and sustainability were not enemies, but partners. He had taken a resource everyone could see, the forest, and found a way to make it produce value without destroying itself. In doing so, he didn't just enrich his country financially, he redefined the meaning of prosperity itself. Asterisk, and so, when people ask today, how did Ibrahim Traoré turn forests into gold? The answer is both simple and profound. He saw beyond the immediate profit of destruction into the far greater profit of preservation. His gold was not just the money in the bank, but the thriving land, the empowered people, and the secure future he left behind. Asterisk, it is a story that will be told for decades, not just as a tale of one leader's bold vision, but as proof that sometimes the greatest treasures are those we choose not to destroy. While Ibrahim Traoré's vision had begun to reshape his nation, it was clear that the true test of his forests into gold strategy would come in its second phase, expansion beyond national borders. If the concept could work regionally, it could transform West Africa's economic landscape. Traoré understood that sustainability could not exist in isolation. Forests don't respect political boundaries. Rivers flow from one country into another. If his nation's ecosystems were thriving, but neighboring countries continued mass deforestation, his efforts would eventually be undermined. For this reason, he began initiating cross-border environmental treaties, inviting leaders from surrounding states to join a collective Green Wealth Alliance. This alliance was more than a symbolic pact. It came with tangible economic benefits. Countries that joined received access to training in eco-product manufacturing, microloans for rural cooperatives, and preferential trade deals for their sustainably sourced goods. The aim was simple: create a united economic front that rewarded preservation over exploitation. One of the first countries to partner under the alliance saw immediate benefits. Previously dependent on raw timber exports, they shifted to producing high-quality bamboo flooring and handmade wooden art pieces. Within 2 years, their export revenue doubled and deforestation rates fell by nearly 40%. The success story became a case study for other nations considering the program. But Traoré's vision went beyond economics. He wanted his forests to become a hub for scientific research and innovation. He allocated a section of the eco-reserve for an African Center for Sustainable Technologies, inviting botanists, climate scientists, and engineers from around the globe to collaborate. These researchers worked on developing new uses for forest products, from biodegradable packaging made from tree bark fibers to biofuels derived from non-edible plant oils. International companies impressed by the innovation potential, began investing in joint ventures with local firms. However, Traoré maintained strict rules. Any company operating in these sectors had to share a portion of their technology and profits with the host communities. This prevented the old cycle of exploitation from returning under a new name. At home, the cultural shift deepened. School curriculums were updated to include ecoeconomics as a standard subject. Children learned not just how to identify plants and animals, but how these could be sustainably integrated into profitable industries. Local festivals began celebrating eco-products, showcasing traditional craftsmanship blended with modern design. What was once a political project had now become part of the national identity. However, not everyone was celebrating. International timber cartels and certain mining conglomerates saw their profits threatened. These groups launched smear campaigns, accusing Traoré of economic isolationism and driving away investment. Political opponents, some backed by foreign interests, tried to portray his administration as anti-development. In one particularly tense period, leaked documents revealed that a major logging corporation was funding armed groups to destabilize rural areas, hoping to disrupt the eco-production network. Traoré responded with a combination of diplomatic pressure and hard security measures. His government worked with local militias, many of whom had once been unemployed young men, to defend the forests they now depended on for their livelihoods. The standoff became a defining moment. Images of villagers forming human chains around ancient trees went viral, attracting global solidarity. Environmental activists from across the world traveled to witness and support the movement. This unexpected wave of attention forced several corporations to back down, fearing public backlash. With the threat contained, Traoré pushed forward with an even bolder idea: carbon wealth. He realized that in a world desperate to combat climate change, these thriving forests were more than an ecological asset. They were a marketable commodity in the form of carbon credits. Instead of allowing middlemen to profit from this, his administration created a national carbon exchange platform. Here, companies wanting to offset their emissions could buy verified credits directly from the nation, with payments going into the Sovereign EcoWealth Fund and community development projects. The move was a financial game-changer. Billions of dollars began flowing into the country without a single tree being cut down. Roads were paved, clinics were built, and renewable energy projects sprang up in villages that had never seen electric light before. But Traoré was careful. He knew sudden wealth could lead to corruption if unchecked. To prevent this, all carbon credit revenue was made fully transparent, with monthly reports available to the public. Independent auditors, some from opposition parties, were invited to verify the accounts by ensuring accountability. He strengthened trust in the system and silenced many critics. By the 7th year of his program, the numbers spoke for themselves. Rural unemployment had dropped by over 60%. Deforestation rates were at historic lows. Exports of finished eco-products were up by 400%. Literacy rates in forest regions had surpassed the national average. But perhaps the most surprising outcome was international influence. Inspired by his model, several Asian and South American countries began adapting similar policies, often consulting directly with Traoré's advisors. The idea of turning forests into gold had evolved from a national project into a global movement. Despite these achievements, Traoré remained humble. In public speeches, he often reminded citizens that the forests belonged to their ancestors and their descendants, not to any government. Gold, he would say, is not what you take from the land, but what you leave for the next generation. In his final term, Traoré initiated what many consider his most enduring legacy, the Forest University. Built deep within a protected reserve, this institution combined traditional ecological knowledge from indigenous elders with modern environmental science. Students from around the world came to learn how to replicate the balance between profit and preservation. Today, even years after the program's launch, the nation's forests stand as living proof that economic prosperity and environmental protection can not only coexist but thrive together. The rivers run clear, wildlife flourishes, and communities live with a sense of dignity born from self-reliance. When historians look back, they may write about Ibrahim Traoré as a revolutionary leader, a political strategist, or an environmental pioneer. But for the people who lived through it, he will always be remembered simply as the man who saw the true value of a tree and taught an entire nation that the richest gold of all was green. By the time Ibrahim Traoré's second decade in leadership began, the forests into gold vision had not only transformed his nation's economy, but it also deeply altered its geopolitical standing. What had started as a domestic environmental economic policy had evolved into a blueprint for global resilience in an era of climate uncertainty. Yet with this rise came new challenges of scale, politics, and legacy. Traoré knew that no matter how successful the model had become, it could crumble if future leaders failed to protect it. History was filled with stories of visionary programs that collapsed once their creators left office. Determined not to let that happen, he began working on a system that would lock the eco-economic principles into the nation's legal and cultural fabric. The first step was constitutional reform. He introduced a series of amendments that guaranteed the protection of natural resources as a constitutional right for all citizens. The forest reserves, water sources, and biodiversity zones were no longer just state assets. They were national trusts, immune to sale or privatization. Any government attempting to reverse these protections would require a supermajority vote from the people. Critics called it an overreach. Supporters saw it as a safeguard against future exploitation. Either way, the reforms passed in a historic national referendum with overwhelming public approval. Alongside this, Traoré established what became known as the Generational Stewardship Council, a body composed not of politicians, but of elected community representatives, environmental scientists, and cultural leaders. This council had veto power over any industrial project that could harm the ecological balance. It was, in effect, a permanent environmental watchdog built into the nation's governance. Meanwhile, the global demand for sustainably produced goods continued to soar. Countries looking to meet their climate commitments turned to Traoré's nation not only for products, but also for training in eco-industrial methods. This led to the creation of green trade missions, teams of business leaders, artisans, and educators who traveled abroad to teach other nations how to implement similar strategies. These missions became a source of both diplomatic influence and revenue. However, not all global powers welcomed Traoré's influence. Some resource-hungry nations viewed his policies as an obstacle to their own supply chains. Trade disputes arose, and subtle economic pressures were applied. At one point, a major foreign investor threatened to withdraw entirely from African markets unless restrictions on certain exports were loosened. Traoré's answer was calm but firm. "We trade, but we do not trade away our future." This hard-line stance, combined with the transparency of his government's economic dealings, inspired an unusual level of trust between the state and its people. Corruption, once a deep-rooted problem, became socially unacceptable, even in rural areas. Villagers who once relied on bribes to navigate bureaucratic systems now saw themselves as shareholders in a national enterprise that directly benefited them. The cultural transformation deepened further when Traoré launched a massive eco-cultural age renaissance campaign. The idea was to revive traditional art, music, and storytelling, tying them directly to the themes of forest preservation and sustainable wealth. Traveling festivals showcased not just products, but also the heritage behind them. Songs about rivers, carvings depicting medicinal plants, plays dramatizing the dangers of over-exploitation. By linking environmentalism to national pride, Traoré ensured that protecting the forests was no longer just an economic policy. It was a moral identity. Still, there were moments of crisis. A severe drought, linked to changing global weather patterns, threatened food production in several provinces. Opponents seized the opportunity to claim that Traoré's focus on eco-products had left agriculture vulnerable. In response, he fast-tracked an agroforest integration plan, blending sustainable farming with forest preservation. Shade-grown crops like coffee and cocoa were introduced, providing both food security and export revenue without clearing land. This strategy proved so successful that within 2 seasons, the agricultural sector became another pillar of the eco-economy. Farmers who once viewed forests as obstacles began planting more trees, knowing that these would increase yields, attract pollinators, and secure rainfall patterns. By his 15th year in office, Ibrahim Traoré's nation was a case study in resilience. GDP growth was steady, debt was minimal, and international ratings agencies ranked it as one of the most stable economies in the developing world. Foreign students came to study in the Forest University, and international NGOs used the country as an example of how environmental wealth could rival and even surpass traditional resource extraction models. Yet Traoré was mindful of the danger of complacency. He often warned in speeches that the true test of leadership was not how much prosperity was achieved in one's lifetime, but whether that prosperity could outlive the leader. With this in mind, he began gradually stepping back from daily governance, handing more authority to regional councils and the Generational Stewardship Council. He also made a bold personal choice, refusing to run for another term, even though constitutional amendments would have allowed it. In his farewell address, he told the nation, "If this vision depends on one man, then it is not a vision. It is a dream that will vanish with the dreamer. But if it belongs to all of you, then it will live longer than any of us." The transition of power was peaceful, a rarity in many parts of the world. The incoming administration pledged to continue the eco-economic model, though with their own adjustments. And while there were debates and disagreements, the foundational principles, preservation, shared wealth, transparency remained intact. Years later, as an elder statesman, Traoré continued to work internationally as an advocate for green sovereignty, the belief that nations could control their natural resources without falling into economic isolation or exploitation. He advised small island nations on protecting their marine resources, helped desert countries develop drought-resistant crops, and spoke at global climate summits where world leaders quoted his famous line, "The richest gold is green." Back home, the forests still stood, the rivers still ran clear, and in villages across the country, children studied under solar-powered lights funded by the wealth of a living, breathing ecosystem. The legend of Ibrahim Traoré had outgrown the man himself. To the world, he was a reformer. To historians, he was a pioneer. But to the farmers, artisans, and children who walked among the trees each day, he was simply the man who had shown them that a nation's greatest treasure was not locked in vaults or buried in the ground. It was alive, growing, and shared by all. And so, long after he was gone, the forests continued to turn into gold.